As you're aware, after submitting an order into Hayworth Orderline, Hayworth Customer Service will request from the dealer placing the order a completed Unicel cell assembly order form. Even though it directly relates to Unicel product, this form is a Hayworth document. This training module was created to demonstrate how to fill the form out and who is the most appropriate person to fill it out. First, let's have a quick reminder of what defines a Unicel cell assembly. So, a cell assembly is comprised of the base cell unit plus all of its corresponding selected parts, such as enclosures, interior components, accessories, and if wall hung, the mounting key and standoff key. After submitting into Hayworth Orderline for Unicel product, a Hayworth customer service representative will contact your dealership to request the completed cell form in electronic format. If you do not have a blank cell form to start with, you can request it from Hayworth customer service. The purpose of the form is to communicate the design intention of how each cell assembly type for a client project is specified. Unicel has the ability to package a cell assembly together all in one box. Not only does this save packaging and shipping costs, but the biggest benefit is that once the boxed cell assembly arrives on site, there's a lot less guesswork trying to match up all parts and pieces that make the cell assembly because the box arrives with all the components together. Also, as a reminder, the cell assembly form only applies to cells. So items like work surfaces and shelf units are not included on the form. One page of the cell assembly order form is to be filled out for each different type of cell assembly. Let's pretend that we have the configuration of Unicel wall-mounted product that's shown in the diagram on the left-hand side of the page. At a first glance, it appears that we have 5 different types of cell assemblies. So this would indicate that we need to fill out 5 pages of the cell form. But actually, if we look a little bit closer, we discover that 2 of the cell assembly types actually appear to be different from one another. With the 27 module cells, by looking inside them, we discover that they're different because they have different interior components. And the two 12 module cells mounted below the work surface, those technically are different because one has a left-hand hinge door and the other is a right-hand hinge door. So this is going to increase the number of different cell assemblies to a total of 7. Let's use these 2 cell assembly examples to fill the form out. We'll start with example number 1 and then move on to example 2. So in both of these cells, for the first one, looks like we have a 27 module cell plus a 27 module roll front, 5 interior shelves, and since there is no dolly specified, this cell would hang off the Unicel rail and therefore would have a mounting key and standoff key. And then the second example on the right that we'll fill the form out for, it's a 12 module cell with casters, and it contains a 3 module drawer, a 4 module drawer, and a 5 module drawer. And let's also pretend with that cell assembly that there's a Unicel subcontainer kit as an accessory in one of the drawers. So I'm just going to pull up the Excel application so I can show you the form itself. On the first page of the cell assembly order form, you will notice an instruction page which you can read over. And then we'll go to Order Form tab number 1, which you see at the bottom of the page. So this first page will represent what we need to fill out for the first cell assembly type. So you'd put the date that you're placing the order. You would put the name of your dealership. So as an example, we'll just put Unicel. and then you would be required to fill out all of these fields of information that relate to your order and your dealership specifically. So we'll just use today's date of when I'm narrating this workshop. On order form tab number 1, when you fill out your dealer information, it automatically translates to the rest of the form. So you only have to fill out that blue section once at the top. So back to our example of filling out that first example of the cell assembly. Let's pretend that that project had 10 of those exact same cell configurations. So we would put a quantity of 10. And then down to section number 2, that's where we would specify the cell. So remembering we've got a 27 module cell that's going to be mounted on the wall. So you can see when I've placed in the Haworth catalog code for that cell, it translates automatically into the description line. And you would indicate the color, so let's pretend it's gray. You don't have to worry about the columns on the right-hand side that say SNET number and PO number. That gets filled in by Haworth or from the form automatically. So once you have the base cell unit, you can move on to enclosures in section number 3. So in the example, we recall that we have a 27 module roll front. So we'll want to find that. So that's the component there, 27 module roll front non-locking. And we'll pretend that it's colored gray. And for this cell assembly type, there would only be one roll front per cell. So you just put quantity of 1. Now let's move on to interior components, and we recall that we have 5 Unicell deep shelves on the inside. So I know that it's the code for that. And a lot of Unicell interior components do not have a color associated with, so sometimes you don't always need to put the color. So we have 5 of those for that cell unit. And as I mentioned, since it's wall hung, you do need to specify that it has 1 standoff key and 1 mounting key, both at a quantity of 1. So essentially, this one page is configuring one cell assembly type. But remember, when you put the quantity there, that indicates that there's 10 for the whole project of that exact same cell assembly. Okay, so let's move on to example number 2. So let's pretend that that project had a quantity of 5 of those exact same cells, and we'll recall that it is a 12 module cell. So that's the code there. So just double check it, 12 module cell with casters, no seismic, no integrity lock. And we'll pretend that this cell is white, so you need to indicate the color. And for this example, technically there is no cell enclosures. We have drawers, and drawers are considered an interior component. So we can go right down to section number 4 for the drawers. So we recall we have a 3 module drawer, and we'll pretend that it has this color. We've got 1 for that cell assembly type. Now we've got a 4 module drawer that we have to find. And we'll pretend that that's a different color altogether. Quantity of 1 drawer for that. And then finally, we've got the 5 module drawer. And as mentioned also as part of that example, I mentioned that on the inside on one of the drawers, you would also indicate your accessories. So we're pretending that there's a subcontainer kit assembly for this, and just a quantity of 1. Okay, so since we used the example of filling out 2 cell assembly types, we only needed 2 pages to fill out of this cell assembly order form. Okay, Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing this example and go back to the main WebEx environment. So again, those two examples are what we just filled out the cell assembly order form for. Within your dealership, it's recommended that the person who is most familiar with how each cell is configured for a client project is to fill out the cell assembly form and submit it into Hayworth. This is regardless of whether Unicell has assisted in creating the product plan or the initial project for your client. So Unicell can help provide some clarification, but inevitably it's the dealer's responsibility to fill the form out and ensure it matches the submitted order. So this concludes this session on how to fill out the cell assembly order form. Thanks very much for your time and have a great day.